Welcome, everyone. We're delighted you're able to join us today. We're going to start in just a couple moments. Again, welcome. We've had a few more join us. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're just going to wait a couple moments as we have a few more people that are just in the process of joining us. Hope everyone's doing well. Okay, we're just at the top of the hour here, and we truly appreciate everyone joining us this morning. I can see we've just got a couple more people coming in from the waiting room, and we'll start in about one moment here. Please use the chat box to share where you're calling in from today. And if you could kindly put yourself on mute as well, we'd greatly appreciate that. Okay, well, welcome again. We are delighted you're able to join us this morning here in Alberta. I am still morning, and for some of you it is afternoon. We're very delighted you could join us today. We are excited to offer the first of a four-part series on Fund Development 101. My name is Tracy Babrick, and I'm co-director of Learning and Network Engagements with Community Foundations of Canada. And I'm joined by my dear colleague, Cindy Lindsay. As a national organization, Community Foundations of Canada operates across the land traditionally known as Turtle Island. The first community foundation in Canada was founded and established in 1921 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, on Treaty 1 territory. We find our staff itself working remotely across 5 different provinces. And it's easy to forget that while we may all not reside together or operate in the exact same location, but our work is grounded by the physical territory that is currently known as Canada. And our work is influenced and affected by the various communities where our staff do live, reside, play, and work. And today, as I mentioned, I'm connecting with you from my home in Grande Prairie, Alberta. And I'm situated on Treaty 8 territory, which is the traditional lands of the Métis, Kelly Lake Métis Settlement Society, and the Beaver First Nation. And I'm grateful to live, learn, and work on the traditional territory of Treaty 8. And I'm continuing to learn on how I can be a better friend to our Indigenous communities and share this journey with the peoples who have settled these lands and currently call home as well. Today, I am honored to say we have staff and board members from coast to coast that are joining us. This session is being recorded and will be available to you following this session. We were set to offer this session in French, and we're very sorry to advise that our translator is sick today and not able to join us. The recording will be translated within the next 48 hours, and we'll have it available for all of our French Community Foundation members, so they also can ensure to enjoy this webinar as well. And we are truly, truly appreciative of your understanding of not being able to offer this session today in French. A couple of our goodies for you for today, just so that to ensure that you have the best experience possible, is that we encourage you to use the chat box for your questions and also your thoughts as well as we move through today's webinar. We also as well encourage you to use the mute button, and because that will allow for our speaker to ensure to provide the best experience for you. And as well, we encourage you to use speaker's view as well. And what that allows for is you'll have a chance to experience Sarah, plus also have the best quality of a presentation. This session is scheduled for 60 minutes, and we will start with our presentation, and then we'll move into a 15-minute question and answer period. So I am excited to get started today. This series is a 4-part series that will explore the essential components of a fund development strategies, including building a plan that is aligned, effective, and manageable, including donor stewardships, do's and don'ts, and explore ways to engage members of your organization and your communities, and much more. It is an absolute honor to introduce to you Sarah Neely, who will lead us through today's topic on building your case for support. Sarah Neely is joining us from Victoria. She is the Director of Philanthropic Services for the Victoria Foundation, which is, sorry, there, I'll just go back there. Sarah is the Director of Philanthropic Services for the Victoria Foundation, which is Canada's second oldest community foundation. Sarah joined the foundation in 2008 and works with professional advisors and their clients and builds relationships in the community to enhance services provided to individuals, families, businesses, and charitable organizations that have established their funds with the Victoria Foundation. Sarah is a native to Victoria, and I have heard from Sarah that her family lives very close to her, and she has the opportunity to share beautiful time enjoying the lands and the community of Victoria with her parents and others. She's a graduate from the Victoria Faculty of Law from 1982. She's been an active member of the Canadian Association of Gift Planners since its inception, and is a frequent speaker and believes that sharing her experiences, learnings from her peers, and mentoring those who are new to planned giving is an essential gift that she can give others. She was the founding chair of Leave a Legacy, British Columbia, and has served on the executive of CAGP's Vancouver and Vancouver Island chapters. And Sarah is a proud friend of CAGP. So Sarah, it is an absolute honor to have you join us today. Welcome. And I'm very pleased to pass the webinar over to you now.
You can just go to the next slide then, Tracy. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Tracy, for your very kind welcome. I'm speaking today from the traditional lands of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Songhees and Esquimalt Nation, on whose lands the Victoria Foundation is located. Next, please. Today, we're going to explore what makes community foundations unique and building the case for support through the strategic planning process. In the next 3 sessions, with myself and with Sherry Meredith, we will delve deeper into the fund development plan, how we steward the donors and their gifts to community, and how we engage the broader community through awareness building, relationships, and the telling of our stories. Next. Well, this is a common refrain. When you have seen one community foundation, you have seen one community foundation. While we may have a common goal of strengthening our communities and working with the donors and their advisors to do this, each community is different. And so are the ways that we engage with our community. It's okay to be different from the community foundation next door. And as we learn together today, just remember that. It's okay to be different. In fact, it's a good thing. Next slide. Being unique. Being responsive to the relationships, the needs, and the opportunities in your community is what makes all of this work. Together, we strengthen the ecosystem of the charitable sector, and we provide a sense of belonging for each other. Next. So here are some considerations. Firstly, discover your unique value proposition. What are your strengths? What do you bring to the relationships that you are building? What sets you apart? Learn. Learn from the work of other community foundations across the country and around the world. Community Foundations of Canada as an association is a tremendous resource through the educational webinars, peer group gatherings, and conference topics. As you meet others across the movement, you will find others willing to share their experience, their tips, and their tools. And because each community is different, the sense of competition fades, unlike what you might be experiencing in your own community if you come from what we might call in this context an operating charity, the ones that we fund. And I know myself that the peer gatherings have been tremendous over the years. I still have lots of notes, and that's where I met Sherry and many other peers across the country, and we still compare notes all these years later. Stay grounded in understanding your own community's needs and opportunities. Delve into what is going on in your community. Try not to be attracted to the latest shiny object that's being done down the road. Really focus on what you need to be doing in your community. Partnership is so important. Partner with the stakeholders to build resilience and capacity for you and for the local charities. We simply can't do this alone. And our donors don't want us to. They want to see us collaborating. They want to know that by working together with others, we build better. And we know that we do. Certainly at the Victoria Foundation, we have many partners in the community. Build your systems and your programs in a way that allows you to meaningfully connect with your donors, and so that there's a place for everyone who wants to belong in your work. Strengthen community through enduring legacies while still exploring new ways. Strengthen your community through enduring legacies while exploring new ways of achieving impact. Continue with the permanent endowment building while embracing new forms of revenue for immediate granting. And we'll touch on this. These legacies that we each have been built on the fund development model of bequests, and this will continue to be key. Over $750 billion will be inherited by Canadian baby boomers over the next decade. Community foundations are well positioned to receive and steward these legacies. But we need to work together to increase the number of Canadians who have a will and who leave a gift to charity in their will. The Canadian Association of Gift Planners has done some research around this and is launching the Willpower program in the fall to increase awareness and to demonstrate that we can provide for both our loved ones and our community through bequest gifts. And some of the community foundations in the Niagara region participated in the pilot, and many of us will continue to participate as it's launched this year. Embrace changing demographics, engaging younger generations. Toronto Foundation's Vision 2020 and our Victoria Foundation's Gadsden initiative are examples of these kinds of engagements, offering networking, hands-on engagement with charities, and grant making for the donors who are involved. Listen, learn, and act on reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion. How are your giving and granting initiatives viewed through these lenses? Integrate with communications. Utilize their experience to strengthen the tone you want to set and maximize the reach of your messages. So important. And finally, don't be afraid to just start and build on it as you go. As we know, in this past year, people talk about creating the plane and flying it at the same time. Well, we've just got to start. We just got to keep going. Next, please. As you explore your unique value proposition in the context of your own community's needs and opportunities, what is your business model? For the Victoria Foundation, we have 3 pillars that are connected and very integral to each other. We want to inspire giving from different donor groups and demographics and harness the philanthropic potential in our community. This in turn helps us achieve impact through donor advised and discretionary granting and our own strategic initiatives. It helps us to be a catalyst for building and strengthening our community. But to do this, we need to effectively manage the human, financial, and information resources needed to achieve our mission. It's a fine balance and one that needs everyone on the team to understand how these are interconnected. Next, Tracy. Building the permanent endowment is the foundation of our work. It allows us to create the enduring legacies to carry out the wishes of the donor and build the capacity of the sector. And of course, we all rely on the fees from these invested assets for our operations and initiatives. But, next slide. There can be some cracks in that foundation. Does the permanent endowment make philanthropy accessible for all? Think about the threshold for your first permanent fund. Is it $5,000, $10,000? Is it more than that? Do you offer pass-through gifts and granting? Do you allow people to top up what's generated from the fund? Does everybody want a permanent fund? With other vehicles in the community and across the country, people are hearing about other kinds of funding where there can be an encroachment on capital for greater impact each year, or for term funds, funds that are held for 10 years or 25 years, and then are fully distributed to have that impact in the community. What options can you offer for donors for supporting their community? How can you make your work accessible for all? Do you have a field of interest funds? In Victoria, we created community action funds last year in cause-based areas to respond to the pandemic, but also to support our ongoing community granting program. This allows people to give at any level to the cause that they're interested in. They're adding to a collective pool rather than to a named fund. Maybe that's how they start with you, and then later they create their own permanent fund. Does the permanent fund allow for enough impact? There has been discussion across the country amongst the top 15 community foundations, and I'm sure amongst others, about this question of, are we hoarding if we're not granting out more than 3.5%? Last year, it's interesting, a recent calculation has shown that the top 15 foundations granted an average of 7.2% of their assets last year. So we are stepping up. In the case of the Victoria Foundation, a large amount of our granting was through pass-through granting in response to the pandemic. But when it comes to looking at permanent endowments and how we are engaged in impact, we have to follow the terms of the fund agreements. Many of these were set up decades ago. We can't go beyond the regular distribution. So we have to be creative as we look at bringing in new donors and how we work with them for a shorter term fund, a pass-through fund, while still keeping the model of the permanent endowment. How do we budget for our own initiatives beyond the donor advised grants that we're helping with? We can look at individual projects and carve out some operations funding from those. How do we secure discretionary dollars? Again, a field of interest fund, cause-based work to meet your community needs. Talk about best practices for how you allocate your discretionary dollars. Show how you're doing it. Engender that trust-based work and that transparency around your process. And as people learn more about that, they will come to say, yes, this community foundation has the best knowledge. They know where to put my dollars. That's the kind of information that you want to be sharing with your community so that that trust really starts to build. Next slide, please. The public trust and our community mobilization is place-based. It's local. But we know that we need to mobilize collectively for a broader action around issues such as climate change and racial justice. As you start to look at your work through a lens of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, you'll see that your local action collectively can have a global effect. It's one way in which to look at your work. But are we moving fast enough? There's a lot to be done. We have to do it step by step as best we can within our own communities. We need to continue to be known by the traditional model, but we also want to be able to expand options and opportunities for engagement with donors, grantees, and community at large. As Andrea Dick notes, this will lead to greater growth. It's more than just the money. And in 2008, when we were all hit with the market crash, we developed a little program here in Victoria called More Than Money. And we started working with the community and with the grantees to give them more resources, more capacity building tools, because our granting dollars were less. It's about building the relationships. It's about a sense of belonging for all, whether it's the donors, the grantees, other community leaders. This is more than transactional. It's all about relationship building. Next, please. But here's Slinky. We know we need to be nimble and able and courageous. And the pandemic taught us this. You know, the biggest word last year, pivot. We had to do it. We also know that each community is different. Each donor is different. This is where we can be nimble. We can be flexible. We can be bold. As new opportunities for engagement arise, we have to be flexible to explore ways to meet the donors and our community where we are at. This is a critical part, and I really think a key asset of a community foundation. It helps us to be what we need to be for everybody. Next slide, please. So as we start to look at the strategic planning process and the building of a case for support, the first is our vision, a very clear, concise statement of the long-term desired change resulting from our work. It's inspirational, it's aspirational, it's for your community. In Victoria, we changed our vision statement a few years ago to a vibrant, caring community for all. The words for all came to light this year as our board chair responded to the racial justice issues. Caring community for all. He was able to utilize our vision statement to talk about our listen, learn, and act on reconciliation, diversity, inclusion, and equity. It gave us a context for the work that we're doing. And it is very much aspirational because it's not going to happen in the short term, but it's something that we can start to work on together. After the vision comes the mission. Next slide, please. So the mission is why we exist. It's important to inform our external audiences of what we do. It summarizes what we're about, and it provides a context for follow-up information on our programs and services. It's also a focus and a motivation for your team, whether that be staff, board, other volunteers. They all want to believe in the work that they do. This is the focus for them. It should be easy for staff and volunteers to understand, remember, and own. The mission also guides the strategic planning and decision-making process. We can't prioritize everything. The mission statement should serve as the leadership team's guiding star when considering priorities and new initiatives. Some of you may have heard of Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. We all know what we do and how we do it, but do we really understand why we do what we do? The why is the purpose, the cause, or belief. It's the very reason we exist. Now, some might say that a community foundation is different from an operating charity, where there's more of a singular focus, such as a university, an art gallery, a childcare center, or a homeless shelter. And yet we know that each of those is complex in their own way. There are many aspects of their work, cases for support to be made, and stories of impact to be told. A community foundation is broad in scope. This is what makes it work. The donors, the grantees, and the community were seen as an umbrella for granting, an umbrella for donors to come under, to provide perhaps one gift and multiple grants out into the community. This is what makes us unique. Next, please. And yet that scope can be so wide that it can overwhelm us or cause us to fall through the cracks. It's important to focus on what you can do in your community with the resources that you have or you can secure. It's important to start within your means, and as you build your reputation and your community knowledge, the interest will grow, the programs will grow, the money will flow. It's okay to take it slow. We're going to be covering this in the next sessions as we look at fund development planning, stewardship, and community engagement. I know how hard it is to say no. And when I talk about being nimble and flexible, I want to do that in donor services. I want to be that for donors. But I have to remember that it has to be sustainable. And I have to sit with my finance colleagues and say, yes, this makes sense, or no, it doesn't, or yes, we can afford to do this, or no, we can't. So remember, each community is different. Work within it and stay in your lane. Next, please. So this next little series of slides are continuing on the strategic planning process. And I have a little fun with a word cloud. And these words that you see are part of the Victoria Foundation's strategic planning process. We, of course, put them into sentences and ordered them in a different way. But this is really just to give you a sense of some of the words that apply to a community foundation. And there'll be others that you will embrace. These are the ones that we've worked with. So looking first at values, how we work together, the culture of our organization. These are the core beliefs that inspire and guide our choices in the way we operate and the way that we deal with people, both inside our organization and out. These values should be embedded in both the mission and the vision and part of all internal and external communications. So accountability, trustworthiness, transparency, listening, relationships, embracing diverse perspectives. Sometimes we lead, sometimes we support, but in doing that, we make transformative change together. Next, please. When we look at our key assets, what makes us different from other funders? What is the value add when working with a community foundation? It's a busy world out there in social good vehicles. There's the commercial-based donor-advised funds, PayPal, GoFundMe, United Way, Benevity. So what are our key assets? Well, the main one for us is our community knowledge. We know what's going on in our community. There may be other grants coming from other places, but we feel that we have the pulse on the community knowledge and can help donors with that. We have the expertise to do it. We have the staff who are professional and skilled, and we strengthen our community through the results that we receive, or results that we achieve, I should say, through granting and through the enduring legacies that we create. Next, please. Strategic priorities. Historically, these have, for most community foundations, these have been building the endowment and granting. More recently, we've added to these two with leadership initiatives, partnerships, collaborations, and convening conversations. And again, it's all with a view to mobilizing that community knowledge. That's what brings people in. That's what sets us apart. We want to partner for a strong and resilient civil society. We want to demonstrate the impact that we achieve. And once we can demonstrate it, then we can share it. We can share it with the donors who support us. We can share it with the community at large. That in turn will help to build the permanent endowment and through other initiatives make philanthropy accessible. We need to strengthen our human capital, leverage our technology, and make sure that we have a strong governance model in place. And then we need to also be listening and learning and acting through the lenses that I've mentioned of reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion. These are part of the strategic priorities of the Victoria Foundation. You will have your own. I just offer the words to you as a way for you to look at this perhaps in a different way. Next, number 21 there. Thank you. So what are outcomes? Well, these are the results that we will achieve. Historically, amongst community foundations, these have been more focused on how much we have, the dollars in, the size of the foundation. In the early days of the CEO gatherings, it was, well, how much have you got? Where are you at? Who's on top? Who's coming up? More recently, though, we focus on how much we share of those dollars, how much we share through the impact of the granting programs and the strategic initiatives, how much we share of our community knowledge. These are the outcomes that we are seeking now. Greater awareness and understanding of your foundation, more diverse and inclusive community engagement. Of course, growing the permanent fund is important. Increasing the number of discretionary gifts is important. How do we do that? Well, I mentioned field of interest, the cause-based funds. Perhaps there's a percentage in each fund that goes towards discretionary gifts. Perhaps you have conversations with your donors about supporting the other child. Divide everything in 5 and give 1/5 to the Community Foundation's discretionary granting program. We need to work together to increase accessibility to philanthropy, not only understanding what it is, but helping people find a sense of belonging in the work that you do. It also needs to be, in terms of a major outcome for us, we need to be healthy for our staff, healthy as an organization. We need to be sustainable in our finances and the way that we can manage our ongoing operations. And we need to be a culturally competent organization. These are just some of the lenses that we look through as we focus on our outcomes. Next slide, please. In terms of the strategic planning process, you will have a look around. What's everyone else doing in my neighborhood, in my province, across the country? What are the best practices? What are the trends that we're seeing? Then you'll do a strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat, a SWOT analysis amongst your staff and board, community leaders, focus group of donors perhaps, and grantees. It's important to see the blind spots and look for the paths forward. It's always interesting to see what comes out of a SWOT and how you might be a little protective of the work that you're doing. Where others see opportunities, you may see threats. Where you say weakness, they may see strengths. It's just an interesting process to go through. Next. As you've looked at your vision, your mission, and starting to set your goals, this is the basis of your case for support. This is the story that you're telling. This is your unique value proposition. The why is key. The how we do it, of course, is necessary. Part of this is connecting and working with your community. It's facilitating engagement with donors, grantees, and your partners. It's telling your story, and it's achieving the impact that can be demonstrated and shared. It's a cycle. Once you tell the story, once you show the impact, the donor becomes interested again, they give, and there's more funding for more impact. Next, please, Tracy. Well, there's the target. Getting to the end of a strategic grant planning process is always a good one. So how do we get there? Well, we're going to start to develop the plans and the programs to meet the strategic goals. This is going to involve all of your staff. And what we found in this past year here at the foundation was that great integral aspect. We had our 3 pillars and we looked at them and said, they are equal, but they are so dependent on each other. We need to achieve impact to inspire giving. We need to inspire giving to achieve impact, and we need to be sustainable. So what plans and programs can we put in place to meet those? After we looked at them, we had to look at the risks. Can we manage this? Is it sustainable financially? Is it sustainable from a staffing perspective? Where do we need the board's assistance? Where do we need other committees' assistance? How are we going to do this? So we develop a 3-year plan, and then we have 1-year objectives. What can we do in this year? Do we have the budget against that? How are we going to then measure it? How are we going to monitor our performance? What we wanted to do was to create something that was a living document that we could have as a resource. We could update, all staff would have access to it, and it wouldn't be something that would be done and then put on the shelf until the next time we look at it. It can really be a challenge when you get into the to-do lists, but if you make it real and if you make it focused and you make what's on that plan what you actually have to do to see your way through the year, it just becomes more real. And I think as everyone for us was working at home, we couldn't gather around the boardroom table. We did a strategic planning process on Zoom. We really had to focus. It's important to be able to do that, but we also have to have the reality check that, yes, we are working from home. We are apart. We are coming off a very difficult year. We're kind of still in it. We're still trying to help our community. So we have to be really realistic in what we can do. Next. So who's at the table? Well, depends on where you're at in the phases of your process and the development and the implementation of the priorities and the goals. There'll be different voices at the table. We did a communications audit last year where we focused on our staff, our board, and different community leaders. It was very helpful to see where we were at in terms of the public awareness messaging that we felt that we were doing last year. And in terms of staff, how we were working together, how we were managing issues of diversity and communication, just internal communication as we were apart, yet trying to be together through different ways, Zoom, Teams, whatever it might be. And we often don't even have time to talk about those issues. So as we put that together, it really, again, gave us a focus that helped as we built our strategic planning out for this year and the 2 years following. So depending on who you want, bring them in. Bring in staff, of course, and board. What about past board? What perspective can they bring? Were they part of the 2008 issues? Can they bring voice to that? What about your donors? What about their advisors? What are they thinking about what you're doing in the community? What about other community leaders? Maybe you have an honorary board or a group of governors who are your ambassadors and cheerleaders. They've been involved with you for a long time, and they can bring that perspective to the table. It's really important to hear different voices, and we encourage you to do that as you're developing your case for support and your strategic plan. Next, please. Well, we've zoomed through that. So we wanted to leave lots of time for questions today because we know that there's a lot of people on the call who bring different perspectives, different voices, different experience. Some of you, I think, are starting today. Some of you have been involved for many years. Some of you are staff, some of you are board members. So as we reflect on today, we're happy to answer some questions. And in the next session, Sherry's going to explore building the fund development plan, expanding on some of the areas that we have explored today. Next slide. So thank you for your attention, and I think I'll open it up to Cindy and Tracy for the chat.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This was just wonderful that you were able to share with us the importance of clarifying our why and the importance of knowing who we are as an organization and our goals and preparing our fund development work and having that strategy behind us. You know, one of the things you referenced, no doubt, was the year that it has been, and how community foundations have, you know, stepped up and engaged in fund development work like no other time, and how we can use that as part of our leverage as we move forward in engaging donors and our community stakeholders. So folks, if you have any questions of Sarah, please use this time to enter your question into the chat box. We've got her for a few more minutes. As Sarah said, the next session on April 12th will be led by our colleague Sherry Meredith, formerly of the Hamilton Community Foundation. looking at building your fund development plan. And then we have 2 other sessions following this in the series. And the third one is on donor stewardship, such an important, critical part of our work. And the final one is engaging the community. So stay tuned for those links to register on the CFC website. These following sessions will be offering simultaneous translation as well. So any other questions, folks? Please use this time to connect with our presenter here. So here's, yes, the presentation and the notes will be available on our website, as well as we will email you the link and the slides directly either later today or tomorrow once the recording is available. And so you will receive that in your inbox. I think these are important conversations to have with your board and staff that are involved in this. Sarah, I just wondering if you can talk a little bit about, and I know the Victoria Foundation is a larger foundation around the role of the board and that whole strategy and how that the importance of clarifying who you are and what you do in our work as community foundations, because I don't think we can emphasize that enough.
Yeah, our board has always been very active, but again, I think because we were working remotely this year, there was a real focus on, or last year, a real focus on keeping lines of communication open. And our CEO, of course, is the main liaison with the board, and she provides them information about trends in the sector, information from Community Foundations of Canada and the CEO discussions. So they receive a lot of information in terms of papers and discussion, but really where it was very helpful was the bringing together of the board and the senior management staff to look at the communications audit to start with, and then to enter into the strategic planning process. And we had a different facilitator this year who looked at our past strategic planning documents and brought forward a framework for us to review it together. And we looked back at our vision and our mission and our key assets and values. And we said, yes, we agree with those. Those still resonate with us. But what was involved there was the board really looking at it in a more of an in-depth way of saying, yes, we agree. We agree that we can go forward on this basis. We agree that the 3 pillars still apply. But then we got into the actual strategic priority goals and then the initiatives around those. Excuse me. And that's where the board had lots of comments. Is this realistic? Can we do this? What about this? What about that? And so we took all of their feedback and with the help of the consultant, brought that together and again, really laser focused from a staff perspective. And we went back and forth between the 3 pillars and said to ourselves, each of these has to be connected to the other and they have to build on each other. Whereas in the past, if it was donor services, well, we're just kind of in our silo. And for those of you who've worked in operating charities, you'll know that in donor development, there are those silos. There's the major gifts and the annual gifts and those involved with gift planning. And the change over the last 15 years or more has been to integrate that, put the donor at the center of that relationship. Make it work from the donor's perspective. So it's a similar kind of thing. What are we doing here as a community foundation? What are the results that we want to achieve and how are we going to get there? And that integrated approach has really helped us focus this year. And the board keep us to that. They wanted KPIs. We're going to report out Q1. We report out, of course, every month. But what are the Q1 outcomes related to the strategic planning? It's not just a monthly update of what we're doing. It's actual focus on those outcomes that they want to see. So they're holding us to it.
Thanks, Sarah. And I think for smaller foundations, well, and I think for any size of foundation, I think if you ask every board member the why of the foundation, you might get a different response from everybody in some way. And so by going through this preparation work, clarifying your vision and your mission and your focus of your organization, your messaging, then you're on really solid footing, because as smaller foundations in particular, we really need board members to be those ambassadors of a community foundation and engagement of, and especially when it comes to engagement of donors. So I really appreciate that. Just a question about, can we invite the board members for the following 3 sessions? Absolutely. We love to see board members at the table for this. As I mentioned, in some cases, when there are little to no staff of the community foundation, board members are critical in this piece as well. Tracy, I'm just wondering if you want to jump in on that question about the vision and the mission. And because in the question, I just lost it here, but you know, where you start to see combining those, which is something I think we need to address.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Cindy. And so important to be able to, as we heard today from Sarah, to really understand who your organization is. And when we look at our why, Sarah, I share with you, we were both in Calgary where David Mead had spoke about the why and what it means around building our work. And knowing your why is so critical. And when we look at our why, and it brings us back to our mission, it brings us back to also our values of our organization. And so it's easy to mission drift if we're not clear and really concise on what your why is. And when we can stay true to our mission and our why, it helps us to ensure that we're always continuing to keep the values and also the state of our organization for the best of what we're working for. So, as Sarah has defined here today around truly the approach around planning and all the different facets to consider, those are really key because they will help to guide all of us within our foundation movements to ensure that we stay true to what we're intending to. I also appreciate that at times we do find different areas that cause us to explore opportunities. And Sarah mentioned earlier around shiny objects. When we can continue to come back to that, the values and the mission, what allows for us to do is to stay maintained on truly what is, not allowing for mission to drift and not allowing for us to maybe get preoccupied with some of those shiny objects. And a shiny object could be as simple as doing a list of ideas around fund development, and then there's a creation of a specific project or so that you go, oh, maybe that's not quite what we've intended. So, I share that with you as thoughts. It's something that I know myself, I've always been very excited about around continuing to maintain the why. And as we've looked at in my 20 years of history through the foundation, I always come back to the why to be able to give us the clear direction to go forward. And it added clarity with all of those other pieces.
Great, thanks, Tracy. Sarah, I think this is an interesting question, and you alluded to this a little bit, but a question about whether your team at the Victoria Foundation have had any concern about the appetite for flow-through funding or short-term funding, and what kind of pressure that might put on endowment giving with the next generation model or our forever model. Just would like your thoughts on that.
It's definitely a conversation, and part of it is looking at how we can be nimble and flexible. I would say that the majority of the people that we are working with are creating permanent funds. However, we do have a number of younger, if I can call them younger, in their 40 to 50 age range, who are interested more in that short-term fund, a 10-year fund, a 25-year fund, where they can see the dollars at work during their lifetime. And they can see more of their dollars at work because they are able to grant out, in our case, up to 10% of the capital. So it's a concern, but I would say not so much a dire concern. It's more of a conversation, and one which we are monitoring. Having said that, we are also blessed to have received some significant estate gifts that are for endowment purposes. So it's again that monitoring. In terms of our long-term fund, the 10-year plus fund, we have a limit, kind of in our mind a little bit how many of those we can really have, but so far it hasn't really been a problem. The flow through is more us being able to respond in the community right away. And some of you may have heard last year we were asked, this time actually, yesterday was the 1-year anniversary, by our local press and a family to create a campaign for COVID relief. And they had a goal of raising $1 million, and they did that in about a week. And we went on to help them through the community to raise $6 million. That was all flow through money. And we did not charge any fees for that work. And it was a full on incredible amount for staff over the course of about 2 months. And then it just seemed to just continue for the rest of the year. And we're still in it. So that was our contribution to the COVID relief and now COVID recovery. Very unusual. We're not seeing that pace, of course, this year, but we also, the flow through funding helps us in our discretionary granting. People will make gifts to the foundation and then we will apply those to our community granting.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Sarah, so much. And just, Sherry references, in Hamilton, they developed a practice of asking donors who only wanted to do flow through to leave 20% in an endowment fund, either as their own donor advised fund, a field of interest fund, or towards a community fund. We see a lot of community foundations adopting practices like that or something similar. So there's lots of ways you can build strategies around that. Another question here, intrigued by this concept of a 10 or 25-year fund. It's a new idea for her. And is there going to be a session where we can exchange best practice ideas such as this one? Absolutely. Like, I think when we look at building your fund development plan, and Sherry, maybe this is something you want to take a note at for April, and the ways we can engage donors. So like your comment about setting aside some funds for an endowment, the concept of a spend down fund versus endowment, what's appealing to different age groups and audiences. So absolutely, we can continue that conversation. So any other questions at this point? If not, please feel free, if you have some questions afterwards when you're mulling this over, feel free to reach out to Tracy or myself directly, and we can also then get in touch with Sherry and Sarah as well. Just so we don't inundate their inboxes. And just a reminder, here are the dates of the upcoming webinars. They will be posted on our website, but Tracy will send out the registration link when she does the follow-up email with the recording link. So April 12th, building your fund development plan. April 26th, donor stewardship, and May 10th, engaging the community. And please come with your questions. We've got these wonderful experts here sharing their time with us. So this is your time also to learn as much as possible. Also, just want to share with you that June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th is our all-in virtual summit. This would have been our in-person conference.
Oh, I think we might have just lost.
Coming out soon with more details about our time to come together virtually in June. And so we look forward to sharing that information with you. If you missed the link for the recording, please visit our resource library. It'll also be there, and also for our events page. Sarah, thank you so much. And Tracy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And Sarah, thank you again for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, but also your passion for community foundations and to help to support our foundations all across Canada. I've been watching the chat, watching the attendees, and we truly have members from coast to coast here that have joined us. And the comments have been tremendous that we're seeing in the chat box. So thank you again, Sarah, for leading us today and starting our 4-part series on Fund Development 101. Really honored to, as well that we'll be having Sherry join us for April the 12th, as Cindy has mentioned. I do also, again, just offer my acknowledgement to our beautiful French-speaking community foundations. We will have the translation of this session available for you tomorrow, and we'll include that as well in the link that will go out. So thank you to everyone. We appreciate you and all the work you're doing in your communities to ensure that your communities are strong. We look forward to continuing to see you at future events, if not before April 12th. We'll look forward to seeing you on the 12th. All the best, everyone. Take care.